Hello, hello, beautiful human. My Twitches are doing weird things and I don't know what is happening.
Being
Oh, just kidding, guys. We're not going to go live yet because my Twitch is not working because I got to affiliate, which is very, very exciting. But now there's two-factor authentication. I don't know if I can do it while we're live streaming. Hopefully, I didn't know it would mess it up. Yes, for anybody that has been following along, I just got to affiliate yesterday and set it up today, not knowing that it would be doing this. So give me just a second. That's always a fun way to start a live stream. Oh, hey, just kidding. I can't start. Okay. Authorize. Go live. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, StreamYard, for at least not making me end the stream and try to figure all of that out. I do really appreciate it. But now that we are actually on Twitch, because it's updated to affiliate, welcome, welcome, beautiful humans. Thank you for joining today on Teach Jenn Tech. We have Mike here today, and please introduce yourself, Mike, and the stuff we're going to be talking about today.
Hey, everybody. Good to meet you all, Jenn's audience. Mike Cavaliere. I am located in Brooklyn, which is actually kind of sunny today. Who am I? I've been an engineer, full stack engineer for quite some time, a couple of decades. And throughout my career, I've done the engineering freelancer role. I've worked for some startups. I've done consulting. I've been a CTO for a little bit. I've been a manager, a tech director of different sorts. And so like, I work throughout my career, I've worked a lot with JavaScript. And, the reason I offered up to teach Jenn some Next.js stuff, hope I'm not spoiling it because you didn't tell the topic yet. Oh, but it's up there. So nobody's being spoiled. So
And
I
it's all
really,
you to introduce anyway.
oh, awesome. I have the power. Like I've worked with a lot of JavaScript frameworks over the years, and Next.js is one that is near and dear to my heart right now because it solves a lot of problems that previously you had to do manual work for, and it just does them automatically for you. And throughout my career, I've seen that happen a lot of times. Back before PHP was a thing, like Perl was a language that I wrote stuff in, and then PHP came along and it did things automatically that you had to do manually in Perl. And then
geez.
Ruby and Rails came along and it did things automatically that I had to do in PHP manually. And so Next.js is one version of that for JavaScript. There's many JavaScript frameworks out now, but Next.js is one of the more popular ones. And so I think it's really good for a web engineer to know because you can do a lot of great stuff with it pretty fast and without, banging your head into the wall.
Very cool. And I think that's also a good place too, because that is for everybody that is joining. See, Anthony's calling you out. You even have a book about Next.js, right?
Anthony, I do have a book out. It's called Cut into the Jamstack. And it's Next.js is at the center of it. But it kind of shows you how to build. You're building a full stack software as a service application with Next.js and like a bunch of other very popular libraries. Chakra UI is one of them. Prisma is a database interaction library. And you deploy it to a server and you utilize the app. And but Next.js is, I write about it in the book and in blog posts, and I talk about it a lot because I think it's really cool.
And thank you for that. I think that is also, and hi, Ben. I haven't had a chance to say hi. So hi, Ben. It's definitely something that I love that this is like where we ended up going with when we connected and went with the show for Teach Jenn Tech. I also really want to call out Mike because I thought this was really cool that he was also like open to talking about like the other show I have, shit you don't want to talk about. And I love that because I think tech and mental health do really go hand in hand, which we can talk about that on the other show. I just wanted to call out that, Mike, I just thought that was so cool. Made me even more excited to have you on the show. Little did I know how you and Anthony know each other. Like, we connected over Twitter space. Y'all, Twitter is amazing. Just, I feel so weird because I haven't used it more than like a couple months, but I'm like, it's just so cool. So definitely check us out. Make sure to follow Mike. And where do you want to get started today, Mike?
We're going to get started by creating Next.js app. So actually, you might have to talk with her. So do we both share our screens at the same time?
I don't think we can. I can share my screen or you can share your screen, but we can like do stuff on your screen and then switch to my screen and go back and forth.
Let's share your screen and I'll see how much I could talk you through. And if we need to switch, we'll switch. And I'm going to do it along with you.
Sweet, sweet. All right, let me get to that point. Yay.
All right.
And I know that I need to get into the right folder because as Anthony keeps telling me to go through and do, I have yet to actually just have it default to this. So
there's always to-dos. There's to-dos
yes.
in code, there's to-dos in your brain.
Oh, yes. And that is 100%. That's all I got is yes.
This makes me think, seeing this too, like we could probably do a whole stream on like just shortcuts to make your life easier when developing.
I feel like we should.
Yeah,
that like we could just have multiple people on that. I feel like could be like a 2-hour stream of just like shortcut hacks.
Yeah, or a series, because 2 hours of it
that's true.
like you have one person on for a half an hour and then another half an hour and then you meet again and you're going to accumulate just so many time savers. It's just going to feel so much more productive.
I do feel like you just kind of volunteered yourself though.
Well, if I got to do it, I got to do it.
I dig it. I dig it. And Anthony, can I volunteer you because you now have to go on the show. And hello, Noelle. So cool. All right. So I'm in the proper folder finally.
All right. Cool. Now we're going to generate an app. And the way you do that, actually, let me ask you, have you, actually, you may not need to do this. Do you have NPM or Node installed on your system? I think you must already.
Yes, definitely. That is the first thing Anthony had me do before his episode, and he was episode number 2. Oh, okay. I have Node and Yarn, even though I still have a hard time comprehending what Yarn is.
Okay, it's NPM and Yarn are very similar. They are package managers for JavaScript. And what that means is when you're building an app, right, you want to use open source code to do things so that you don't have to invent the wheel each time.
Right.
So
right.
In this case, Next.js is an open source JavaScript library that we want to use to build a web app. And under the hood, it's going to do all these other things for us. It's a JavaScript package that we install into our project that's going to do a lot of things. So if you've ever run npm install or yarn install or yarn add, when you say yarn add some library, it's going to find some library in this package place in the internet, and it's going to pull it into your project. So it's going to copy all the source code so you can use it in your project. And it's also going to make a note of it in this file that you've got, so that anytime you install this package on another machine or you reinstall it, it's going to know to pull in those packages automatically. So
okay. And
managing the packages.
That makes sense. And two things really quick. What up, Ian? And I do want to also put this on there. It's the node modules folder that Anthony said to never look in. I do. So is it each time before you start a project that you have to reinstall it? Or if I already have Next.js on my machine, do I need to reinstall it? And if not, how do I double check that I have it?
So you want to install it every time into the project.
Okay.
And, well, actually, let's walk through the process because this will be a good example of me explaining it to you. So let's start. We're going to start by generating an app using what's called Create Next App. It's a project generator by the Next.js people, and the way you do that is it's quite easy. In your terminal, you type. Let's use. All right, which are you more comfortable with, npm or yarn?
NPM is what I think I've used the most.
Okay, so
Pretty
let's
sure
use
that's
that.
what it is.
There's a command called npx, which comes with npm, and that just it's like node package execute or something like that. Npx spaced, and let's see how it runs. Create dash next dash app space, and let's see, what can we call it? Maybe we call it teach Jenn Next.js. Works
I
for
get
me.
excited and yes, proceed, right?
Now, yeah, you hit yes, and it's going to install the Create Next App package on your system, and then it's going to run it. Oh, okay. So it doesn't like the capital letters, which makes sense.
Okay.
The convention for a lot of node packages is lowercase hyphenated.
Okay. Well, we can just do Next.js then. You know, I at least was trying to do that, but well, let me do this. Initials of Teach Jenn Tech Next.js.
Cool. All right. So,
yay.
Oh, so I think it's interesting. I don't know if I realized it uses Yarn by default. So it looks like it used Yarn to install the packages, and you see it's just listing all the packages that it's installing. And this is related to what Anthony was talking about. All these things that are listed in this like tree view here, you know, slash and string prototype. These are all in the node modules folder that you don't want to look in, but that's where all these useful single purpose node packages are, the JavaScript packages that do all kinds of different things that the library that you're using, Next.js, depends on.
Okay.
And you'll see this in open source projects. You know, the bigger your project is, you don't want to write code that does something somebody else has done and better. You want to just use that code. And these are all little things that people have done really well that just get pulled in. So if you look at the contents of your folder, well, there should be a new folder called TJT Next.js.
I'm going to cheat and just pull this up so that way I can look at it next to it.
It's not cheating. It's doing it your way.
And it is. Ta-da!
So you see there's the node modules. Don't look there. And it's going to generate a couple of things. And this is the directory structure of a Next.js application. But you'll see this with a lot of JavaScript applications. A couple of things that you'll always see, package.json. If you open that up, that file does a couple of things. It tells you all about your project. So if you have a license for the project, it'll list the license, your name, the name of the author and such. But
I honestly didn't know I had brackets on here. I think this is a conversation that I've had multiple times because when it just opens something, I'm like, oh, I have brackets. Let me.
You could probably just drag it onto VS Code.
Open my VS Code. Eventually, I'll make it a default. See, we're just going to have like this like shortcut hacker jam thing to just like shortcuts for everything.
It's going to be great. So this is your package JSON, and this is a file to remember because it's like a manifest for your app. The name of the project is important, but like most notable right now is dependencies and dev dependencies. And dependencies are what this project depends on. So your app is going to depend on Next because, on line 12, because it's a Next.js application and it needs the source code from the Next.js project to do anything.
Okay.
It also depends on React because React is an important, it's necessary for Next.js to run. It's a dependency of Next.js. So these are just other libraries that come bundled when you generate a Next.js app. The important thing to know is that when you look at this file, these are going to be the things that your project directly depends on that need to be included here. So if you were to save this code repository in Git or GitHub and someone else would pull it from GitHub and install it on their machine, they just need to run yarn install and it'll see this package JSON file and it'll install all the things that it needs. Next, React, React DOM, ESLint, ESLint config next, all these things that you see listed here. And then those in turn will install their own dependencies. Does that make sense so far?
It does. I'm also seeing if I hate that I haven't fixed this yet. And what up, homie? And Anthony wrote a lot of stuff, so I'm like trying to figure out. Oh, I will say like this one is probably a big thing of I appreciate that you explained it, especially with what Anthony is saying here that we skipped over it. Right. I think the part that I am still a little lost on is when I was doing stuff with Square, it was a web payments SDK, I believe with Next.js with a React wrapper. Saying it out loud, other people seem to know what that means. I don't quite understand why would it have a React wrapper if Next.js needs React?
Next.js, I'm not sure the content of that episode, but Next.js is a React wrapper in a manner of speaking.
Okay.
React is a UI library or a library for user interfaces. Next.js has React within it, and it uses React for the user interfaces, and it adds much more around it. So it in a manner of speaking, it does wrap React. So it might have been the other way around, or they might have been saying something different that I don't know about.
Okay. Anthony said that was a Square SDK installed into a Next.js project.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And he also provided the links to look at it later. That is in the comments if anybody wants to go check it out. I am going to see if I can finally get code dot to finally open this. Oh, I did. Okay, cool. Again, something that I need to get fixed. Now, really quick, because this is probably one of the parts that I struggle with. Can you create a new repository from here, or do you need to create it on GitHub first to upload it to?
You do not need to create it on GitHub first. And in addition, when you ran create next app, it creates one for you. So if you go into your or wherever you utilize Git, whether from the terminal or from here, you'll see that there's a Git ignore generated. And if you were to run Git status in the terminal, you would see that there's a repository there. All right, on branch main, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So that indicates that there's a branch main that you're on. If you run git log, you should see that it committed the initial files for you too. So there's the initial commit from create next app. So that's another cool thing about create next app is it gets you started on a good foot. It's another thing that you don't have to do manually.
Okay, and then I like Anthony's response of on my productivity episode. I feel like we could just do this once a week with productivity tips. He'll get set up with GitHub CLI. That's what you need. And yes, okay, I will go back and get this uploaded to GitHub later. That's fine. I'm just working on getting the practice of doing so.
Good.
So, all right, cool. So we got it updated. We have everything here. And then
how about we run the app? Do you want to run the
app? I
app?
was just going to say, I don't even remember how you run it, but I know that localhost would be our next step after we run it.
Yes. So if you run the command yarn dev. Oh, and really quick, if you open your package.json on the right, you see under the scripts where it says dev.
Yes.
So line 5 and 6.
Yeah.
This is where that dev command gets defined. So on the left, find a command that you want to be able to run from the command line. And on the right, you tell it what to do. So you run yarn and then dev, or npm run dev. It's going to run the command Next.js, which is defined in this project. So this is just one thing to know in the back of your mind, because when you want to create custom scripts that run things from the command line, that's where you would do it.
If you want to be a hipster, it's pnpm. See if I can even say that.
Anthony, right. You're distracting.
He always is, but it's entertaining. Okay, localhost. At least this one is 3,000. Yay, we have it.
And this is all generated for you. And so one of the cool things about it, one way I like to learn, and I have since I was learning web development, is to see like something created and kind of reverse engineer it. And so like I like to look under the hood at the code a little bit and see how things happened. So if you want to look at the anatomy of this page, let's take a look in your VS Code at the folder structure and kind of see where things exist.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm curious just because, for some reason I'm totally went to pages because but I think it's because of something that I'm working on for open source with distribute that I went to pages, but I don't think that's actually where it is.
Your intuition is right though. That is where you keep pages in Next.js. So anytime you create a JS file in the pages directory, it becomes a Next.js page. And we'll do that in a minute. But if you open up index.js, you'll see all the contents to this page. You'll see welcome to Next.js on line 16 inside a H1 tag. You'll see get started by editing pages index.js, like all the code for this page is here.
I'm also like looking at the like documentation because I like how they have it in like the box. Yep. And I was like, I don't think I've ever looked at or understood to look at it to go, oh, so I get that this is the link. And with the class name styles grid, that's how the style grid is how that was made. And then it's using styles grid that was defined earlier, and then styles card to know that it's a card.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
Yes. I am learning. It's been 2 months. I would never have known that 2 months ago. So that's exciting.
And that's, just to reiterate, like, this is why I like reverse engineering things, because it's like when I was a kid, I would get Legos and I would build them according to the description. And then I would kind of take them apart halfway. And then I would kind of rebuild them my way. And I always found that to be a very valuable way to learn. You kind of look at what somebody built and then you take it halfway apart and do it your way. And that's what we're going to do here. So
Real quick, Ramon, I was just talking about you, and hi. That's actually, so he's part of Distribute Aid and how getting into that open source. And we were working on, they wanted to create a template page that people could just copy and paste certain aspects of it. And that's a lot of where thinking of seeing like these style grids and stuff like that were things that we were having to set up for them, even though I think they're using Tailwind and it's a bit different and all that, but it's like, oh, cool. Okay. So hi, thanks. Now I can continue. I got excited that more connections.
Very cool. Okay, so yeah, just I'll do a quick explanation of like how HTML works in React in general. Everything in React is a component, right? A component at its minimum is just a function that spits out some HTML. Can do a lot more than that, often does do a lot more than that, but that's the simplest form. And in React, the HTML is kind of augmented. It's not just plain old HTML. It's JSX, which is, you know, there's definitely HTML in there, as you can see, like the main tag, the H1 tag, the P tag, looks very much like HTML, with the exception that class name is not an HTML attribute. Class is, but in React, we use this class name attribute. And for reasons I won't even bother going into, I also don't remember why, but that's what you do in React. And now, so you could write any arbitrary HTML in here for the most part. But then when you pass in the class name styles.description, that's where Next.js comes into play. So Next.js automatically lets you use CSS inside React, which if you were to generate React in other ways, you might have to do an extra step to get that working. That's one of the things Next.js provides for you. And if you were to look on their homepage, you'd see this as a thing that they advertise as one of the Next.js values. In fact, like, we should take a really quick look at it. It's good to have on hand as a reference of like why we use Next.js, and it's nextjs.org.
Oh, it auto completed into something that I've looked up before. Yay. Okay.
It's the React framework for production. So if you scroll a little bit, image optimization, zero config, you know, file system routing is something we'll probably touch on. Where do they have built-in CSS support, right? And so this is where the documentation would be for this, but we'll just do some simple stuff in here so that you can kind of see how you can start to use CSS in a Next.js app and style stuff.
Cool.
So to break that down really quick, you had noticed that in the divs, there's this styles.container attribute, styles.main, styles.title. And you had noted that styles was defined somewhere else. And if you look at line 3, this is where it's coming from. It's importing this object styles from a CSS file.
Oh yeah, I can write this. It's been a minute. Okay. So that would have to be somewhere in here, or like installed somewhere.
And so if we look at line 3, and we could break down how this import statement is working. So
oh, it's under styles. Oh, okay.
Just as a note, if you go back to that file really quick, and I would double click it so you keep it open. Cool. Yeah, if you noticed, like when you first click a file in VS Code, the tab home module CSS is italicized. That means you're just kind of opening it temporarily, and if you click another one, it'll replace it. But if you double click it, it'll keep it open.
Oh, this is exciting. And Ramon just volunteering you of, we're going to do a productivity series of shortcuts that each developer uses. So you'll have to be back on the show too. All right.
Cool. So go back really quick to index.js. There's an important thing there. So on line 3, when you go import styles from, yeah, I would leave the folder director view open.
Okay.
So what I'm talking about. So when you see the dot dot import styles from dot dot styles.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the dot dot means go up one directory. So
okay.
.js is in the pages folder. When I say import styles from dot dot slash styles, the dot dot says go one directory up from the pages directory. And then styles means go down into the styles directory. So you're telling it the relative path, like where to go to find this file. So
at some point, I'm not ready to like look into this yet, but I learned about that when working at GoDaddy and doing things with cPanel and Plesk, and I mean computers in general have that folder structure. But I feel like at some point I do need to like put 2 and 2 together of what does this all do with that kind of hosting stuff, because I'm still a little mind blown there. But I like that it's so consistent to learn across all of them. So thank you for also explaining what the dot dots mean, because I don't think I knew that one. The rest of them I could like figure my way around.
Yeah, no problem. Now we can do something fun if you want. So let's look at the index.js and the home module CSS at the same time, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, you already know how to do that. You're a master of that.
But I do need to make my screen bigger.
Yeah, and you can probably hide the sidebar if you want.
Yay.
All right. So now, so in the import, you're importing just this one object, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's some Next.js magic that basically says import everything from the CSS file, and every so on the right, everything with a dot container dot main, those are CSS classes. They're called classes in CSS. And when Next.js imports styles from this file, it says make every one of these top level classes a property of the styles object. So at the top where you saw dot container, dot main, dot title, if you look on the left, you've got divs class name equals styles dot container, styles dot main, styles dot title.
Okay.
So like line 7 on the left.
Yeah.
Line 1 on the right.
I think where my mind went, which just means I skipped ahead, even though I wasn't supposed to, was like, where is the title to kind of like go look at that, or the description, or the grid? Just because those are mostly, it looks like they're used more often than just the container.
Okay. Yeah, that's valid. Yeah, title is used. Well, let's see what's used the most. Title is used, description is used, grid is used, card is used. So like, but they all correspond to stuff on the right side. So there's a card.
Is there a way to turn this doodad off where you can skip around?
Yeah, that's called the mini map. So if you go into either view or window, I'm sure Anthony's gonna tell us before we do it. There you go. Show mini map, 4th one from the bottom. Oh, on the left side. Move.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
There. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so, tell me if that makes sense so far.
It does. It does.
You want to try changing one of them?
Yeah.
So pop open your browser.
Now I gotta find it again. Please stand by. Ooh.
You want a Mac?
Yes.
If you hit a Command Tab, that's an easy way to jump back and forth between windows.
Yeah, I don't think, because I have a ton of Chrome browsers open. How does it know which? That's actually a great question. So I have 3 monitors. How does it know which Chrome browser to go to based on, does it know to do it based on monitor? I don't think so.
No, I forget.
So
I don't know what the rule it uses, but I know how to tab between the Chrome windows.
Sweet. I'll make it a little smaller for now. There we go. All right.
All right.
So
you can click the browser, and then we'll just look at the browser. You want to pick something to change the color of?
yes, because I think it'd be cool to change the title colors.
Title of these cards?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. So actually, here's a good exercise in finding, if you go to the browser, this is a useful way to sort of find what you need to edit. So if you right click on the titles of the cards, well, one of the titles, and you go inspect, boom, that's going to open up the Chrome debugger console. And you might have to resize a little bit just to make some room to see there. You could probably hit the escape button once and it'll close the console on the bottom.
There you sweet. Go. Okay.
All right. So this is the Chrome debugger, and it's an extremely valuable tool. In this case, we're looking at the HTML structure that is generated for us. And you see that H2 documentation tag. On the right side, you could see all the CSS styles that are applied to it, and even toggle them on and off and edit them without actually saving any code.
Is this a REPL, an REPL? I don't know what they're called.
I don't even remember what the acronym means, to be honest. I have to look it up. REPL, I forget. I know that's an acronym, but I forget what it means.
I think it is. Console is REPL, from what Anthony said. And
read
what
about
up, Axe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Probably is.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the important thing to remember is, like, you can toggle and edit all the CSS on the right side in real time and see how it affects stuff without actually touching your code. So it doesn't save anything. If you refresh it, it'll all be gone. So let's try it in the browser because it's fun.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've really struggled with is, like, people have shown me how to do it in here, but then I'm like, but how do I go find this and execute it within the file structure if it is something I want to keep? So very excited about this. Okay, so here is my documentation, and this is my H2.
Now, this is probably why it's a little hard to translate. So scroll to the top of that window on the right.
On this left. This is right. There we go.
All right. So on the right side of this right window, it's listing the files which have the styles that you see on the left. And what this window is, it's a list of CSS styles in order that are affecting the element you have highlighted on the left. So the H2 that says documentation in it is affected by the style.home_cod blah, 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 H2, which is defined in home.module.css line 95. And so, and then in turn, it's affected by global CSS and all that. And if you click it, it takes you to the line in the file.
Whoa.
Right. Whoa. You're darn tootin', whoa.
That's cool. Now I don't know how to go back to where I was, but
elements. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, and you could always right click and inspect it again. It's easy to get lost when using this. But like, hopefully this demystifies it a little bit. The reason they call it CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And the cascading comes from the fact that you can apply styles to the same element in different places in different files, and they cascade, they combine, and the end result is what you see. And there's reasons you want to do that. I don't want to confuse you, but just know that you might be applying styles in different places that affect this element. And so
is that kind of like with JavaScript? And I'm totally piecing together different parts, but so one of the Mishko from who created Quick came on and was explaining, like, I know that with like JavaScript, it reads from top to bottom. And with quick, it only reads what the page needs to render.
Got
If CSS is cascading, I guess you could say, like on that, would that mean that it's read top to bottom, or it's read what's inside of something else, and that's why it's cascading?
The cascading is not a matter of the way in which it's read.
Okay.
It's more in that multiple things. There's a cascade in the way in which CSS applied to an element. Like if you really got into it, you could apply CSS styles to an element through classes. You could apply it through the element name. You could apply it through the parent element. So there's like a weighting to each style you apply, and depending on the weighting, one will take precedence over another. So for example, you see how there's different CSS selectors on the right side in the screen that are being applied to the same H2. One is the H2 tag, one is an asterisk, and one is .home card LPL1 H2, right? Those are all called CSS selectors. Each of them has a different weight to it. So if you apply the same style with different values, like color, for example, if you were to apply a red color with the H2 selector, a blue color with the asterisk selector, and a green color with the home card LPL1 H2 selector, the top one will probably weigh out because of its level of, because of how specific it is, because there's a system of weights in that selector. And that's a cascade. That's the cascade that it is.
Got it. Okay.
So it cascades in the way you apply the things. And there's like a certain level of weighting to which one wins.
Okay.
For the most part, you don't have to know that, at least not right now when you're adding styles to stuff. That comes in handy when you're seeing styles applied at different places, but in like a style system.
This was too good not to clip. Oh, Anthony created a clip for us, or from something else. But there is a clip.
All right. I can't wait to check it out.
Oh, it is. It was you. That's funny. We'll share it afterwards.
All right, can't wait. Let's add some color. Pick your favorite color, and we're going to apply it to the H2.
Okay, and to apply it to the H2, because it is inside of both of the, I'm also saying this out loud to see if I registered what you were talking about. I would need to go to the home CSS on line 95 to be able to change the color.
Right now, you can try any of them, and we'll see what happens. So like right where you are now is fine. You're adding a CSS rule called color.
Okay, so I open it or not? I use the plus sign.
You don't open the file. I didn't actually tell you, so that's on me. Double click in that area where the other styles are. Yeah, it's a little hokey with the double clicking, but
there we go.
There you go. And then you type in color, which is a CSS property, and then you hit tab, and you can enter a color value. Now, the ones that are auto-completing for you are all named colors, so you can put in one of those. And so pick one that looks okay to you.
Yay.
Boom. And now, if you notice, it applied to all of the H2 tags here.
Very cool. Very cool.
And so
go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. What I was going to say was what that means is we picked a good style in home module.css to actually put into the code. If you were to apply a color to one of the others, it may or may not have the same effect. The H2, it probably would. But this one you can't even edit because this is a user agent style sheet. That means the browser's style sheet. This is the browser has a style sheet. These are your browser settings.
Okay.
But this is a good one to apply it to. So if you look at home module CSS line 95, we could probably put in a color that you want in VS Code in the editor itself and reload the page, and it'll still be there.
Okay, so we are going to go to home.module.css, line 95.
And then you go .card h2. So that seems, you'll notice that the selector is a little different in the browser. I think that's because Next.js is doing some dynamic generation of these styles.
But it still helped a ton knowing the line file.
Yeah.
I'm curious to watch it change. So I'm going to try a different green.
Sure.
Okay. Apparently this one also just only has certain colors.
Well, if you delete that, actually, you notice your autocomplete was giving you all different types of colors too. So
yeah.
In CSS, there are a certain set of named colors like green and aqua and all these other things. But if you hit space, or I think you probably hit control space, it should give you some like autocomplete options. There you go. So you notice the ones with the pound sign?
Yeah, the hex colors.
Exactly. Like you have all these hex numbers as well, and there's an infinite, well, maybe not infinite, but a very large number of hexadecimal.
So we could look up a hex number and put it in here.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool, and that makes sense on branding too, to like understand branding and making sure that the colors are accurate, because I love that debate. I've been on both sides of that debate of, yes, it is that color. No, it's not that color. Yes, it is that color. So entertaining.
And so now you're getting a syntax error.
I know why. Semicolon. Damn semicolons. And commas.
That's what errors are for. They catch our mistake for us.
It's the same thing. I do it every time. Now what?
Did you save the file?
I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. Save. Yay! And it changed the green.
Sure did.
Okay. That was fun.
Cool.
Don't know why that's so fun to change a color, but that was fun.
Yeah. Oh, here's another fun thing. So this is another fun thing about Next.js. Change the color again and save the file, but don't reload the browser. Change it to something like different, like red or tomato. Oh, that's a cool little picker you got too. Like that.
Okay, so it was like control space. Yes. How about gold? Golden rod.
Golden rod. Beautiful.
Sure.
All right. Now you save that, and all right. And now just click the browser. Don't reload it. Boom.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
That's hot module reloading, and Next.js, it will do that not just with CSS and HTML. It'll do that with JavaScript with your logic changes, and so you can completely change components in the browser, and it'll refresh that stuff without you having to reload anything, which is great.
I feel like that makes it a lot easier. Anthony just said you'll hear most people call it HMR.
Hot module reloading, yeah. Just
thank you. I'm like, wait, what was that again?
You hear people refer to it as that. It may ring a bell.
And it really does make me think about how easy it was to change colors. And it makes me think about Ben and accessibility and being able to make sure it has a high enough contrast. And Ben, yes, I will look into Steph. Look them up on the Twitters at some point. Okay, that was fun. Now, I am curious. So how would I add, if I want to add another box?
It's great. Well, do you remember where well, let's see if you can answer this. What would you make the box out of? Like, what type of code would it be?
It would be in the JS file. because it's already had all of the CSS modules created. So I would just need this stuff from the JS file.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know which stuff, but I can figure that out. Let's see if I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like each of these are their own. What's this one? That one doesn't have a name. So this one does, though. So it's from the A tag. Copy. Enter, paste, and then come up with a website. Maybe do some Twitch. Oh, this is like makes it a lot easier. Seems to be like a lot easier to build a website too. I don't know why it's suddenly clicking. Yeah, because it makes more sense why I could never figure out classes. I was always so bad at trying to figure out classes. I don't know why. Just never made sense to me.
They will eventually. We'll help you with that.
I don't want it. I want to. Paste. Wait, that's not what I wanted. Goodness gracious. Really? Copy. And then go here. I do not want all this. I'm just going to do some undos because I feel like I moved some other stuff too. There we go. That is highlighted.
Command Z is your friend.
Huh?
Command Z is your friend.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Examples. Teach
some branding here.
Teach Jenn Tech. Discover how to build. Discover examples. Ooh, I like that. All right. And save.
All right. And don't reload the browser. Boom. Look on the right.
Oh, it's there. Oh. Yay.
And click it. Make sure the link works. There you go.
Yay. We can see ourselves.
Oh, no. Inception.
Is there... I'll look at this later. But I hate that it does it... Oh, Anthony just said, remember when I said on the React episode, you'll never need classes in React? Dude, that was 2 months ago. So sure, but probably is the reason I kept going with this.
I mean, it depends. Depends on what kind of project you walk into, unfortunately. But no, he does have a valid point. Yeah, go ahead. You sounded like you were going to ask a question.
I guess, like, what? How do I say this? What is something else that we could do with this that isn't just making a pretty website? Because, yeah, I want to make it do stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how to make it do stuff. But I do like making it pretty.
Let's do. Wait, sorry. You don't feel like making it pretty, or you do?
No, I do like making it pretty, but I want it to do stuff. Like that's the more important thing because it needs to be functional, not just pretty. So
let's do this. Have you ever used fetch in JavaScript?
So yeah. So I mean, I've worked for API companies and like being able to like fetch and get, or maybe they're not the same, but it's definitely, I think I've done it. Okay. I don't know.
Well, we're going to try. We're going to do something that is going to add some React interactivity. And it's going to have a couple of pieces that are going to be a little confusing, but we're going to work through it, and pieces of it are going to start to make sense. And so I'll try and talk you through each piece as we do it, but It'll take a couple of pieces. And then at the end of getting those couple of pieces together, we'll have some dynamic data in here. Sound good?
Yes. And Anthony, to your point, these shows can take up to an hour and a half. We normally try to keep them under an hour, but I schedule that extra half hour just in case we need it for stuff like this. If it's a good breaking point, cool. If not, let's keep going, you know? So I'm guessing we won't need CSS anymore.
Not right now. No. Anthony does have a point though. It is going to take more than 5 minutes. So if it's up to you whether you want to, how you want to handle it. Do you want to keep going?
Oh yeah, I totally want to keep going. I'm like, I want to do stuff. I want to make it magic.
All right, magic. Cool. Magic. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you in your browser to open up documentation on the different pieces, so that so that you can reference this stuff later and start to understand it more. The first thing I want you to search for is it's called useEffect. It's one word, useEffect, and useEffect is there you go, useEffect React, and click. Let's see, Hooks API reference is probably the one we want to reference for now, but later on you'll want to look at using the effect hook.
Okay.
So if you click on, so midway down the page on the left, there's useEffect.
Why, this one?
Yep.
Okay. Yay.
All right. Now, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of background. So number one, useEffect is what's called a hook in React. And the simple thing to know about hooks is we already have components, right? We know that components at minimum spit out HTML or JSX code to make things pretty, to show you content. Hooks are how we add any kind of thinking to the component. And that's just a very general statement. But that's all you need to know right now is that hooks, number one, they are how you add anything more elaborate than just rendering text out in HTML. And they also start with the word use. So use this, use that. It's just a convention. But when you know hooks.
Oh goodness, what was I trying to compare it to?
Prepare to be confused, Anthony.
So I know that and would this would be considered a webhook then? Because
no.
Okay, what's the difference?
It's a different concept entirely.
Okay.
A React hook. This is a React hook.
Okay.
In the React world, there's this notion of hooks that add interactivity to your components. A webhook is like a server-side thing. It's like a piece of code in your app that listens for something.
That's what exactly what I was thinking about and wanted clarification, because I was like, it doesn't sound like you're describing that, but wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, totally different. That's a good thing to make a note of in your own personal notes later. But React hooks, just for adding interactivity and all kinds of thinking. And so we're going to use useEffect, and useEffect, the disclaimer I got to give you is it's in a way one of the most basic React hooks, but it's also one of the most confusing. Just want you to remember that and try and remember how I tell you to use it, because even the documentation is not super great on it. It needs a lot of work, and they're working to improve this in newer versions of React, and there's better ways of handling this. But to do what we're trying to do, which is the simplest way to get some data and put it into the page, useEffect is probably the simplest way to do it.
Okay.
And so that's what we're going to do. And so with that, let's write some code, and we're going to do it step by step.
Groovy.
So in your component, so this is a Next.js page, right? And in a Next.js page, they all say, as you see on line 5, export default function and the name of the page, right? Every Next.js page just exports a function, and it exports default. It's the default export. And that it basically spits out the HTML for the page. Now, if you want to add some interactivity to it, as you would any React component, you do it before the return statement. So you see on line 6, the return statement is what spits out all the HTML.
Mm-hmm.
So any interactivity and any thinking and React hooks has to come before that. So
Can I ask you a quick question?
of course.
Okay, so let me see if I can figure out how to ask this. If we wanted to do, because the index page is normally the home page, I'm guessing, but if we wanted to be able to add an additional page, would we add a page here and just tell the index page to pull from that content? I know it's not necessarily what you're talking about, but just so I can fit it in if I wanted to build a new page and what to do with that.
So building a new page is one of the easiest things in Next.js. In fact, we could do that really quick if you want to.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful just to like really visualize how that would be made.
Yeah. So creating a page, that's one of the best things about Next.js is that creating a page is super easy. So in your pages directory, create a file and let's call it about.js. And this will be your about page.
Sweet. Okay. And if
then
I save that, it'll show up.
Well, it'll probably show nothing yet because you're not doing anything in there. You do need a little bit of code, but you can try it. Let's see what happens. I don't know what happens if you load a blank page. So if you go to localhost / about, there you go. All right. So to give you this error, and this error is actually informative, the default export is not a React component. And that's because if you look at your index, it's looking for a default export. It's looking for you, Next.js is looking for you to export a default function for the page. So what we're going to write in here is export default function about page.
I'm just seeing if it's in there. Function about page.
Yep. It'd be one word, about page, because it's the name of a function in JavaScript, and they got to be one.
Okay.
And since you're defining a function, you got to put open and close parentheses at the very end of it. At the end of the about page, rather.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And you're going to need open, close curly braces. And this is all just, JavaScript function definition. And it'll probably still throw an error, but if you save it, it's going to be a different error.
Okay. And
the error is probably going to say, or it's just going to show you blank content because we're not returning any content. And remember, in React, this is a component, and every component, for it to show you any HTML, it needs to return some. So if you just return like an H1 tag.
And so really quick to catch up on comments, and then I'll do that. Starting with Ben's, totally page building seems to be Next's core feature. Like the API makes it very clear what it's for. And Bakari said, we did something similar with the Square integration. Anthony, yeah, this would have been a good intro episode to the Square stuff. I got really confused with Square stuff, but like not at the same time. It was like I could comprehend it, but didn't know how to break down the individual pieces of it. So yeah, Bakari, like when we created the simple backend. Okay. So that catches up there. And if I'm wondering, beautiful. I can spell humans and save.
Now, why isn't it showing up?
Because it has no CSS?
No.
I don't know.
No problem. You have to return it. You have to put in the word return.
Where?
Right before the H1 tag.
Oh.
I'll do a little much more explaining that in a second, so you have a little background. Probably need it on the same line, or I'll probably reformat it if you've got code formatter.
That?
Yep.
No.
Look at you.
Okay, please explain the return, because
Sure.
I think that could be something that I've definitely missed in a lot of this.
Also, you're going to want to make a note to install Prettier in VS Code. It'll format the code for you, and it'll
It's installed.
Oh, interesting. It's not running?
Yeah, I thought it was. I'm having to look like what it says in the corner because my laptop covers that side.
Okay. Well, no worries for right
It's
now.
probably a part of our productivity stuff of telling it, setting up Prettier at some point.
Cool. All right. So what we have here, so JavaScript functions, right? So there's JavaScript by itself outside of React, outside of Next.js. There's two ways to do. Well, let me start simple. So when you declare a function, if you just say the word function about page, inside of it, you can do whatever you want. In React, for it to render any HTML, it's expecting you to return something. So a function in JavaScript can just do something like console.log or whatever, or it can return a value. And what that means is when you call that function, either the function will just do something, or you say my variable equals call that function, and that function will calculate something and return you a value. Functions or these default these component functions React, for them to render HTML, they have to return HTML. It's just the convention used in React. It wants you to return it. So the return statement is where you spit out the HTML for the page. So if you look at index.js, it's the same thing. It says export
Return,
default,
okay.
and then it's a big return statement with all these divs and stuff in it.
Got it. I honestly think I was missing that every time. And Anthony, I'm not sure what you mean by that Next.js page hello world snippet, but it definitely, I don't really do hello world. I do hello beautiful humans. Gotta be, I always say it, so gotta be, difficult with that. But make about page about for consistency.
He's just talking about the naming conventions. Yeah.
Oh.
Anthony's a stickler for detail. But if you open you see how we have our export default function home, it's capitalized. In the about page, you would name it just about with a capital A. Now, this is your convention. Like, it's good to keep consistent across the files in the project. You should make that a capital A, though. Did it read?
Oh, I thought I did, but
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'll pick a different convention across a single project and try and keep consistent, like home page or something like that. Like I use the word page, but this is a good practice. Cool. So let's go back and try and see if we can get in some interactivity. So now you know how to create a page
and how easy it is. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
No problem. But yeah, if you go back to the about, I'm sorry, if you go back to the end, yeah. So now we're going to, first we got to get the use effect from React.
I'm just going to take us back to the homepage really quick.
Good idea.
Okay, so one more time, please.
First, we got to get the use effect hook from React. We got to import it. So we're going to add another import statement.
And would the import statement information be here?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm going to tell it to you because this is I don't even know where documentation would be on like how typically to do this, but typically this is how we import stuff from a lot of open source projects. You're going to import, but this time you're going to import with curly braces. So if you open a curly brace right here, and you type use effect, lowercase u, capital E. All right. And then outside the curly brace,
No. Okay.
move your cursor to past the end curly brace.
Okay.
Space from. And you could do this all on one line.
Okay.
And do another space. Add quotes. And react.
Is it with a capital R?
Nope, lowercase. Typically, or exclusively nowadays, when you're importing something from a package that you've imported into the project with Yarn or no npm, they should be lowercase.
Okay.
If you notice at the top, we're importing from next/head, next/image. Those are all lowercase too.
And then this is, the value is never read, but this will change once we start building more in here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And you can save it, but just to break down the statement, if you notice, so I think you have a sense of what import does, right? It says pull code from another file or a package into this file. The ones at the top are different. They don't need curly braces because you're pulling in the default export. So like when we created the homepage right here on line 7, it says export default. So there's a default thing getting exported. So when a file exports a default, you can import it without curly braces. So import head, that package does a default export. Import image, it does a default export. Use effect is not a default export. It's a export that you import by name. So you need to use the curly braces.
Okay.
I don't want to blow your brain up, but just know that the differences in the way you import are dependent on how the file exports them.
And that makes sense. All of that made sense. I think where I'm a little lost is, and this is going off of memory, so I'm not sure where, but I thought I've used it in some type of file where it did import React. And that's where I'm a bit like, if I imported React, would it have imported use effect if I imported React as a whole, or I would still have to do it by itself?
It would, but I don't want to confuse you.
Okay.
Because it's not the same across different places you import from.
Okay, cool.
Importing and exporting is probably a topic by itself that, you know,
Cool.
if we had a couple of different files, we could show all different ways of doing stuff.
Cool.
Just know that when you see the curlies versus no curlies, there's a difference in how the file exports it.
Okay. And Anthony also said import React was an older convention that is usually handled by the new version of React.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Perfect.
All right. So let's pop this use effect in. Now, this is where it's going to get interesting. So inside your function definition, but before the return statement, we're going to type in use effect. All right. And now we're going to open and close parentheses.
How do I know if they're supposed to be right next to it or a space between them?
Usually Prettier will tell you. But
Okay.
it's either it should be okay, I believe. But I usually put them right next to it. I think most people. And
Cool.
so the parentheses mean you're calling this function, right? And this happens to be a React hook. And if you notice the definition that just popped up, there are 2 parameters that it's expecting, effect and depths. All right. Now, without confusing you, use effect is, it's a confusingly named thing, but you can say that it's running like a side effect, right? A side effect is something that happens that isn't the main purpose of this component, right?
Okay.
Main purpose of the component is to render out something, right? A side effect is something that kind of happens on the side, which is a very basic way of putting it. It's the least confusing way to tell you it right now. And I think it's sufficient for now. And so what it's going to do, it's going to run a function, a side effect function, And the dependencies, we're just going to pass in a blank, and I'll explain why in a second. So first, let's give it a function. So if you declare a function here, you can declare it as a arrow function where you just put in another set of parentheses, or you could declare it as a, let's see, what's the easiest way to do this? Let's do it as a regular function. I typically don't do this, but put in the word function and open close parentheses and open close curly braces. Sorry, after the parentheses.
After both or just the first set?
Right there, yeah. So you're passing this function as the first parameter of useEffect. This is the effect function, okay? useEffect is looking for two parameters. It needs a function and it needs an array. Okay?
Okay.
Bear with me.
I know the words you're saying. It's that it hasn't fully like solidified what they each do. So that's why I appreciate you're telling me what to type, because I'm like, okay, eventually I will learn that's what it means.
Yeah, and in this case, this one won't fully sink in, but just bear with me, and the pieces, sure. We'll get something working, and then you can understand it a little bit more as time goes on.
Yeah.
After that ending curly brace, I want you to put a comma.
After the curly brace?
Yep. And you're going to put open and close array brackets, square brackets.
Oh,
yep. There you go. All right, now save that. This is going to do nothing. All right.
Sweet.
But this is the framework for how to call a useEffect function. Now, inside there's curly braces. Add a new line. All right. So what this useEffect says, what this one with these defined says, is we're going to run some code after the component initially mounts. It gets added to the screen. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what we want to run is a fetch function to a website that I'm going to give you. So JSON placeholder. If you Google for JSON placeholder, JSON placeholder. All right. Should be the first result. And this is a fake API. It's an API with just a bunch of dynamic, randomly generated fake data. And it's really good for projects like this that you just want to pull in some data for the sake of pulling in data and do something with it. It's a very useful tool to have. And so if you scroll down a little bit in their documentation, you're going to see
the fetch.
Yeah. And if you run it, you'll see the JSON data that it gives you, right? Another way we can see, don't put this in your code yet. But if you see that URL right there, in the fetch, you can take that URL and you could paste it in another tab in your browser, and you'll see what the JSON response looks like. All right. And you see, this is dynamic data. If you refresh it, it's going to be different, I think. Oh, actually, no, they stay consistent. But if you delete the one, in fact, delete the number altogether and just go to to-dos, it's going to give you an array of to-dos.
And they're all user ID 1. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect.
Some of them are too. We just got to scroll. Okay.
Because it's different users, different fake users that created them. And so this is just something that you can paste in and we can pull data from and do something with. Now, let me think really quickly. What the easiest way to do this is without it being crazy. Yeah, pop that in there. And what we're going to do is save that. And if you look in your browser and open the console, you should see it logging out some JSON data. And so, oh, you don't have to refresh. You see that? It's spitting out those objects right there. So have a look inside your code again. And I would delete the number 1 in the URL. And you see how it spit out a 200 element object right there? And now you can just kind of page through it to see what that object looks like. And look at all that. You've got all these elements in here. So it's a big array of to-dos, like fake to-dos. And so you just fetch this data. So applaud yourself really quickly because you just
Yay
from an API into your Next.js project. Now the thing you want to do with it is put it into your code base. And so you can spit it out and render some cards with it. And now this is where it gets a little interesting. There's certainly better ways to do it, but we're going to do it a very basic way, simply because this is another building block in React that can be valuable, right? I'd like you to look up the documentation for useState.
State?
Yeah, Anthony did useState, A-T-E, S-T-A-T-E. Although useState would be a great hook to have.
I'm just like, why you, what? Okay, useState.
Yeah. And I'm teaching you things that this isn't, necessarily the best practices way of doing it. This is a learning way of doing it.
And I appreciate that, especially with, I'm definitely in the API world and I can understand a lot of it. I've been struggling with going with, okay, I understand a lot of the concepts, doesn't mean I know how to make it. Right. So I appreciate this and just getting the experience with it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we got useState.
Yeah. And so what useState does, it says, this one's a little more intuitive. It says that in my component, I want to keep track of something. I want to keep track of the state of something. So in the example they give you, it says const count set count equals useState 0, right? It's what this is saying is I want to keep track of something called count, which has an initial value of 0. And I'm getting me a function called set count where I could set it when the user does something, right? And so later the user clicks a button and it says set count, count plus 1. It adds 1 to the count. And so rereading it back, that line that uses the useState says, I want to keep track of the state of something called the count. It starts at 0, and I have a function to set the count anytime I want. Okay. So in our code, we want to keep track of the set of to-dos. Okay. So you could even copy and paste this definition here to work off of this, the count.
Yeah.
You want to format your code a little bit to make it neater so you can read it better. That's a good thing to do right now.
And then it would go right here, right?
No. You want to, so you can't really use hooks inside hooks in that way. Well, you can and you can't.
So we would just need to do it outside of this curly bracket and do the same thing after I import it.
Yeah, or you could do it beforehand. I would do it beforehand just for ease of readability. So before the use effect, I would add another line. In fact, you kind of have to because you'll see why in a second.
But that's not going to work.
You can add. So so this is a good opportunity. So this is another named export. So you just need exactly. You're doing it correctly. So you just add useState. Okay.
And then we want to useState and then bracket. Wait, wrong one. And then we need to give it a function.
Well, let's start over. So if you I delete that line and take a look at the way we're using it in the documentation on the left. Now, useState is a different type of function. And you remember some functions return values, some don't.
Okay.
useEffect doesn't return a value, useState does. So you got to say something equals useState. So the way we're doing here,
okay,
it's got a particular way of defining it. So you just want that one line, const blah, blah, blah equals useState. Oh, not that line.
Okay. We don't need that function for it to work?
No, you're already in your component function. That's just an example component function.
Cool.
There you go. And so, again, this says I'm tracking a variable called whatever, and I'm creating a setter function for it, something that lets me set the value of it. So what we want to track is to-dos. So I would change count to to-dos. Sorry, in the first variable. Undo that. So this is to-dos. Yep. And then the function, instead of set count, we're going to be set to-dos with a capital T. All right. And then inside useState, we're declaring the initial value of it, which is just going to be an empty array. So square brackets.
Oh, okay. Square brackets inside of the
Correct.
these. Okay. There we go.
Cool. Now let's read it again in our context. So I just said this to you like 5 times. So sorry for the like broken record. But I want you to understand what useState does. And sometimes repetition helps.
Yeah.
What this line says is I'm declaring a variable called to-dos, which is going to track the list of to-dos that I'm pulling from an API. I'm declaring a function that lets me set those to-dos to any value that I'm getting from the API.
Mm-hmm.
And the initial value of it is the one I'm passing into useState. It's an empty array. So it's going to, so to-dos will start as an empty array. And then when I call set to-dos, it's going to set it to whatever value that I pass to it.
Okay.
And so the place we're going to do that is after I'm done fetching the API call. So inside our use effect, we're saying that when the page loads, fetch from this API, then convert the response to JSON object on line 12, then take that JSON object and console log it out. But now instead of logging it out, we want to call set to dos. So if you change that console.log call to set to dos, it's going to save that object we returned from the API and put it in the to-dos variable. So now the to-dos variable will have that list of to-dos in it, and we can access it within the HTML and spit it out.
So would our next thing to be, would we build the, if we're going to put it in one of these like boxes, would we put a box up here so that way we understand that this is all together, or would we put it down here with the rest of the HTML stuff or the CSS stuff?
You want to put the HTML rendering with the HTML. You want to keep the thinking code above the return statement and all the showing things code inside the return statement.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Or did
it does. So if I want to have it show, I would want this here, but the class name would be something to do.
No. So let's take a step back and do it a little simpler. I would delete that chunk of HTML, and the first thing you got to learn is that if you want to put a variable and output its contents in the render world in the return statement, you need curly braces to start off with, right? If you notice, like you see class name equals, and it's got curly braces. That says evaluate this JavaScript object styles.card and give me the value of it, and then render that out. And so let's try that. But I'm gonna give you something in the chat that is gonna prevent you from being too confused. I'm gonna give you in the private chat. So we're gonna render it like this. So let's see. Use right. So this is a little code snippet that I just sent in the private chat that you can just put right in there. And I'll explain why in a second. You can delete that, yeah. Boom. And now save that. Oh, I might need to do something else with that, but let's see if it breaks. Boom, look at that. So you've got just a dump of the data in your to-dos variable. So now you know where that data is stored. We just have to, because it's a big array of JSON objects, we have to navigate that variable to get to the parts that we want. Does that make sense?
Yes. Pause for a second. Everyone in the chat is saying you're doing an amazing job, and I would agree.
Thank you.
And also the JSON.stringify.
Yep. So if you look back at your code, do you understand the concept of JSON, or do you need that little explanation?
I won't, say no to the explanation again, because I'm like, I think I know, but I don't remember. It hasn't like sunk in enough yet.
That's okay. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's if you look at, can you open that browser tab where we let's see, where we ran the API, so like the JSON placeholder URL. Oh yeah, well actually that one is. This is good too. So this is JSON. It's just a format of describing data. In this case, it's describing a list of to-dos, and basically JSON's a very simple format that a lot of APIs use for sending information across the web, and it basically, the reason they call it JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, is it's the same way you would declare an object in JavaScript, right? You got curly braces, and then inside the curly braces are a set of like names of things and their values. So a user ID is a thing, value is 5. A title is a thing, big chunk of text is the value. They're called key value pairs, okay? A key is like, this user ID is a key, ID is a key, title is a key. It's a key to get a value out of the object, okay? Without overloading you with too much detail, JavaScript object notation looks like this. It looks like a bunch of curly braces and brackets and colons. And basically any JSON object is going to either describe like just a set of names and values or a bunch of those in an array.
Okay.
Is that not too confusing?
This is something that I've learned that I may not understand it 100%, but it's something that will definitely click later on. So I'm not going to stick on it.
Yeah, that's fine. In this case, this is a JSON object that describes a list of to-dos. This is the list of to-dos that I pulled from my API.
Okay.
And we're going to display in the page, right? So going back to what people are saying in the channel, if you look at your code, the reason I'm calling JSON.stringify is React isn't going to spit out a JSON object for us and show us the contents. I need to convert it to text. I need to convert it to a string.
I get that part. Okay.
This is just so that we can see the contents of it without throwing an error. Okay.
Okay. Cool. That makes sense.
All right, great. Now, what we don't, now that's not how we ultimately want to do it. We want to take each one of those to-dos and spit out something, right? So what we're going to do is to-dos is an array, and arrays have a function called map, right? Which says, take every element of the array and do something with it and give me the new version. So what we want to do is take every to-do and we want to spit out some HTML for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So delete that. All right. And let's do open up another set of curly braces because we want React to evaluate what's in here. And then we want to take to-dos and we call to-dos.map. So evaluate, or I'll explain in a second after we type some. To-dos.map. Open curly braces. Open parentheses. All right. Now, to-dos.map is a function, as you can see, that has one function called a callback function. And I'm going to run whatever function we pass in here on every element of to-dos. All right. So every to-do is going to run this function and return the result. So we're going to declare another function like we did before, right in here. And we'll just say function.
And then is it?
You got an extra.
Sorry?
Although that sounds really cool, funcation. I need to take a funcation soon. All right. And now you'll need an open and close curly braces for this function. I'm sorry, I keep saying curly braces. Parentheses. All right. And then after the parentheses, you need the curly braces for the body of this function. Delete that one, and you'll need an opening one and a closing one. All right. Now hit enter just so we got a little space in there. So recapping, the outside curly braces say React, evaluate this, and render the output.
Right.
To-dos.map says I'm taking the contents of the to-dos array, and for each element in the array, I'm going to run this function in here. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is important. This function is going to take one parameter, a single to-do.
Okay.
So in the function definition that we just created, in the parentheses,
It will choose just one.
yeah, I want you to put the word to do in there. So this is the name of the parameter that's coming in, right? So what this says is every time this function runs, sorry, just to do, singular.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or we could call it anything. We call it T, whatever is easy for you. But all this is, I'm taking in a single to do at a time, and I'm going to return what I want that to do to turn into.
For sure.
Okay. And so let's start really simple. Let's just take this to do and let's return the title. So
and we go to, that one didn't compute.
Right. So this function that we just created is going to take a to do, which we're doing. We're taking the to do in as a parameter, and we're going to return the to do's title.
Okay.
So inside the curly braces in the middle, return to do dot title. All right. Now it might throw an error because it's returning array, or I can't remember. It might work. So let's save that and don't refresh the page. Let's just scroll. Yeah, you did. All right. So these are titles, but you can't see that they're different. So let's make each one of them an H1 tag. So go back into your code. So wrap it in an H1 or H3 maybe. Actually, no, the cards were H2. So let's do H2. You don't want to wrap the return statement, though.
Just the to-do title?
Correct.
How did I just do that and then I'm going blind? That is not good.
And now it may give you an error because because right now it just thinks that you're asking it to render out the text to do. It doesn't know it's dynamic data. So you got to put it in the curly braces. So put to do dot title in curly braces. There you go. Boom.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Now, if you take a look back at it, you want to recap again and review this?
Yes.
So from outside to in. This is a good point from Anthony. This is 90% of all React development you'll do in the future, this process. Yeah, and he's right. Like, this is a lot of React development. Taking information in, state of a component, taking it in from somewhere, maybe from an API or maybe from outside somewhere, manipulating it, rendering it out. It's a core of it. It's a really important part of React development.
Okay.
And so looking at the curlies again, curlies outside say evaluate this and give me some kind of HTML. To-dos is an array. Run map on the to-dos. So for every to-do in the array, transform it using this function that I'm giving you. Transform it, you take a to-do, you spit out an H2 tag with to-do.title in it. Boom. That's the whole thing right there.
So that's all making sense. And then if I wanted to make it into the cards,
you're going to do that. So let's do that. And I think your instinct is leading you in the right place. So do you want to just try it?
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, so it's not going to be clicking somewhere. So I don't think I need a link. So I'm going to do this name.
Well, actually, taking a step back, if you delete that for a second, and let me see if I can guide your thinking a little bit.
Sure.
In this statement, we're saying do this for every to do.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to put the HTML code outside this block or inside? Or in other words, do you want to do all that HTML for every to do, or do this loop for every to do inside the HTML?
I want to take all of those to-dos and make them different boxes.
Right.
So all of these show up as boxes.
Right. So what you want to do is you want to take this, big chunk of HTML, href, whatever, and you want to do that for every one of the to-dos, right?
Yeah, but that sounds really hard.
To have that card, right? So take a copy of one of these HTML chunks, and you're going to put it inside the return statement because you want it inside the map function because that's happening for every to-do.
Oh, okay. So it's this. Wait. Let me.
Oh, you're doing great.
Undo some. So I'm gonna build it and then put it where it's supposed to be.
Absolutely great approach too.
And so I want this inside of the H2. I don't know why there's a rar.
That's a HTML character for like the little arrow, I think.
Oh, okay. And then we can call this all of hold on. What is this called? What line am I on? 70. Okay. Use effect? No. Which one did we use for this? This was the use effect?
We use the use effect and a fetch.
Okay. Which ones are these for? Was it for use effect or was it for fetch? Was it for use
this is
state or
that's
use?
the result of the API call. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Trying to say that these are all of the use states or the use, like what we would have used them for, but that's okay.
These are all the to-dos.
Okay, we'll just name it that. That works for me. And then the class name is card. And then do I link this part to something?
If you want to.
But I don't need to link it to something. Well, I guess I could link it to this.
You could leave it there, just so because they're already links, and the links have the styles.card style on them. So I don't think it'll hurt to leave there for now.
Okay, and then I take all of this, delete it, and then I replace this with all of it.
I don't know. Let's try.
Oh. No. Where did you go?
Don't worry about that warning. I could explain that in another segment.
I just don't see. Oh, it's right there. Okay. Well, now I want to see what it does. Oh, it did it.
What? Look at that.
Okay, that was fun. I mean, there are some CSS things that I would definitely end up wanting to fix, but it did it.
Did it. You want to do one more thing?
If you have the time, sure.
Well, one more thing, and it's going to be a fast one.
Cool.
Go into your code. Instead of making it say all the to-dos, let's make it have the to-do description.
Okay. And Anthony was saying I don't think he doesn't think I have a useState mental model yet, so that's why the question is confusing.
I'm not sure which question he means, but I'm not surprised. It can be a little confusing. So,
okay, and then we wanted to put all of their abouts, right?
Take a look at the JSON object that you pulled up there. Yeah. So what do they have? Oh, actually, you know what? There's no descriptions in there. I'm sorry.
But we could put their IDs.
Absolutely right. Go for it.
So if I wanted to do that, it would be well, hold on. I would want to do this one here and their IDs, which would be to do dot ID. Squiggly space or squiggly? Do I need space? Do I need space right here?
I don't know. Let's try it.
Okay.
See if it breaks.
Yay! Let's get rid of that arrow. That looks dumb.
See, now you can have fun with it and kind of like change it to how you want.
I think you created a monster.
Good. We need
Okay, I can leave it like that now. I was like, I did not like the yellow, but it was like a good. And then, so have you heard of, and Anthony, I might need your help explaining this one because now I'm just trying to connect dots. Have you heard of Bedrock? Is it Bedrock CSS or Bedrock HTML? I'm not sure which it's considered.
I have. I don't know too much about it, to be honest with you.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is I'm just wondering if it would be something for the web layout to fix these boxes.
Well, that's a fork in the road because you can fix the layout with just CSS before you like add another framework or library for it. And that's up to you, you know, like you can definitely figure, I believe you could figure out if you wanted to, how to fix this with just CSS. The question is, do you want to learn more CSS or do you want to go in a different direction? And I'll leave that totally up to you because I do have to jump off in a second.
Yes, so do I. I think it's more of this is, and let me make sure I save this before I take it back to us. It's more of just, I'm not fully seeing, like, I'm very much enjoying learning each of these platforms and like different ways of doing things. I'm still not to the point with when you connect them, why you would connect them together. That I still struggle with. So that's why I'm wondering about Bedrock. Not that I necessarily want to learn CSS, but oh, hey, I learned CSS. So would this be something that would go in here kind of thing? There's still so much learning, but this is exciting and a lot of it made sense. I will say at some point, we're going to have guests on here to talk about APIs, but it might be from where I work. So that way they can explain APIs from their point of view, but we will see because I'm excited to talk more about APIs. I think this is my second or third time doing an API or an SDK. So it's definitely seeing it actually happen seems completely different than just knowing about it. spacing words now. But whatever, y'all get what I mean. It's been, my brain is definitely going to mushy mush now, but in like such a good way. I'm really excited about what we built. Thank you.
Right.
And knowing that that there's a JSON placeholder.
Yeah, extremely useful tool. I use it, whenever I'm proof of concepting something. So, but you did great today. Congrats to you. Pat yourself on the back. You picked up some things really well, hopefully at a pace that's useful to you. And now you have something you can play with more.
Yes, and thank you. And Anthony, really quick, just as a heads up, somebody from Postman is actually planning on coming on to talk about GraphQL. So, well, everybody, please leave us comments. Let us know what you think. If you want to hear more about a certain subject, make sure you click follow and share these. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day, beautiful humans.
Thanks, Jen.